Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by my channel today. This is Jessica, and today I am making a one-page scrapbooking layout, and I was inspired to do this page by a group that I recently discovered, and it's only my first day working with it and I'm having so much fun. So this is from 30 Days of Sketches with Christy's Beautiful Life, and it is a Facebook group. And in this particular series, she is posting a scrapbooking layout sketch each day in the month of March, and then you can follow along and post your version of it. So on this sketch there is that circle, and I have cut that out of my Art Philosophy Cricut cartridge, and then also there are a bunch of strips of paper, so I'm using up some scraps from my Something Fierce paper pack from Close to My Heart, and I counted and it looks like there are about 10 strips showing on the sketch. And so since it's my very first time playing along, I want to really remain as true as possible as I can to what the sketch is showing. And some of my strips of scrap paper are zip strips that are a 1/2 inch wide. And so I've decided to keep it all uniform, and I'm just cutting up all of my scrap paper here in 1/2 inch strips. And at this point, it doesn't really matter how long they are, just as long as they're all a 1/2 inch wide. Now the sketch is also showing that on the base page that there are some like splatters and splashes and things of that nature, and I've decided to come in and do that with my Distress Oxide Picked Raspberry ink. So I'm using my mini ink foam blending tool, and I'm just going to start blending some of that Picked Raspberry onto my base page here. And this base page is a patterned piece from Something Fierce, which is a retired paper collection from Close to My Heart. But as I started working on that, I wasn't exactly sure exactly where I needed that pink to be on my page, and it was too hard to keep picking up all of those little flimsy 1/2 inch strips of paper and trying to lay them out and see exactly what was going to show. So I just grabbed a scrap piece of cardstock and I decided to glue them all down, and then that way I could pick it up as one unit as I was putting that Distress Oxide ink down, and have a better idea of exactly how much coverage I needed to do with that pink color. So here I'm just going to go through and glue on all of those 1/2 inch strips. And again, I'm not really paying any particular attention to what is long or sticking out where, because I do end up cutting it in just sort of a random looking pattern to where I like it. And so now I can see better where exactly that picked raspberry is going to show, and I can pick the whole thing up as one piece, and it is a whole lot easier to do the sketch that way. So I highly recommend that. And so now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more picked raspberry. Originally, I was just going to do the bottom corner and the top corner, and then I decided I wanted it to come all the way around that strip center piece. And so I'm just kind of going in a big circle around the middle of my page, and I'm letting some of the areas be darker than others and some, be lighter as the ink runs out on my blending tool. And so that way it's got a lot of different variation to it. And I'm just moving my sponge in a circular pattern. And then I'm going to add one more layer to my base page here. So I just started playing with this, even though I've had it for months, and it is gloss spray. And I used it for the first time earlier today. And so this is only the second time I've ever used it. And I'm not spraying on this particular project. I'm just kind of taking the stopper out and tapping my finger against it so that I'm getting drops of that gloss spray on my page, and that ended up looking really cool. So I have a feeling this is going to be one of my new favorite tools that I've got in my craft room. So I want this picture of my two daughters to kind of stand up just a little bit, since it is the focal piece of this page and the only picture that's on the page. So I put a bunch of foam tape behind it, and I made sure that, my picture wasn't going to sag anywhere. So I just kind of cut a couple little pieces and, got all of that area covered there. And so that way, like I said, it kind of gives it a little bit more emphasis, and I'm not going to have any sagging in my photo. And now I'm just kind of testing, because the one time I did test, it was still a little wet and I got some blue on my fingers, but now it seems to be dry. I was very impressed with how fast actually that gloss spray dried. I did hit it with my heating tool, my heat gun at one point, just to make sure, but really I didn't use that too much, and I only gave it a few minutes and it was dry. And it has a really cool, in person it's got this glossy look to it, that's why it's gloss spray, but it really does look pretty cool when you can see it in person. So like I said, a new toy for me, and something that I think I'm really going to be having a lot of fun with. So I don't know why I let it sit in my stash for so many months before using it for the first time today. Excuse me. But it definitely is something that I see a lot of in my future. All right, and so now these papers that I have, these strips that I have glued together, they measure 6 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and center it on my page with 3 inches to either side. And I don't really care how high up or down on my page. Again, the whole page is really sort of random looking, but I did want it to be centered from side to side. So I measured over for 3 inches and used my T-ruler there. And now I'm going to go ahead and put my picture down right there in the center, and then it's time to start doing some of those side embellishments. Excuse me. Now, the sketch did show an ampersand down in the bottom corner of the picture, and so I used some pewter cardstock, which matches the color that is in this paper collection. And I cut it out on my Cricut 3 times, and then I'm just gluing them together just so that it gives it a little bit more, I don't know, it's more like chipboard like that way, and it doesn't feel quite so flimsy. And so that's going to go down there in that bottom corner. And then I did use my tags and tabs thin cut from Close to My Heart to cut out this patterned piece of paper, also from the Something Fierce collection, that I'm just going to stick over here to the side. And again, that's something that shows in the sketch. Like I said, it is my first time playing along, so I really want to make sure that I am following the sketch as closely as possible and not really deviating too terribly much. Now, since my picture is popped up on foam tape, some of the ampersand is also going to need some foam tape, and then some of it can just be glued right down to the picture. And then I'm going to sit it over that bottom right corner right there, and the title is supposed to go over the top of it. So I will deal with that here in just a second. I'm still kind of thinking about at this point what I want my title to be. I really liked that in the sketch it had that ampersand because it was a picture of my 2 daughters, and I like the idea of the word "and" for them, you know, the 2 of them together. Excuse me. And then at this point, I'm just looking for what kind of string do I have in my stash that I want to use to tie off the top of that tag with. And I decide to go with some of this green twine that I've had for ages and ages. I'm not even really sure where it's from. But I tie it a couple of times around that tag, and then I'm just going to tuck that tag behind the picture. And then that part is mostly done. At the very end, I do end up stamping a little sentiment on that tag. But that part is all set now. Okay, and then back to the sketch. It shows some stars. There is supposed to be a star over the top of that ampersand, as well as one over that tag. And so I am a huge fan of the wood embellishments from Close to My Heart. And when I pulled out my wood stars, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm actually almost out. I feel like I just ordered more of these. I go through them so quickly because I love them so much. So I have just a few stars left, enough to wrap up this page. I think I ended up having one left in my bag at the very end to save for another project. And I'm just going to adhere those down to my page with some liquid glue. Now, I did have my mono adhesive from Tombow on my desk, but honestly, I don't know what it is about, if it's just my particular bottle of it or what, but I can never get it to come out the way that I want it to. Either it doesn't come out or it comes out too fast and too much. And so I just kind of switched over here to my bottle of art glitter glue, which has a better flow for me. So I think it's just this random bottle. I don't know why that I always struggle with. And yeah, I keep reaching for it because I'm like determined to use it. And then yet I usually end up switching over to my art glitter glue. All right, so time to tackle that title. So I have actually pulled out 2 stamps of the month. One is the current stamp of the month. If you were watching this in March 2021, Winged Masterpiece is the stamp of the month from Close to My Heart. And there is a sentiment on there that says, lucky to be your. And it's meant to go with some of the other stamps that are on the set that say like husband and wife. But obviously I have a picture of my 2 daughters on here. So this is going to be lucky to be sisters. I'm going to leave off the word your. And honestly, I did kind of fuss with the stamping of this for quite a while, trying to get it exactly right. And so I cut a bunch of that out. But I just inked up the lucky to be and then I left off the your, so there you can see that part. And then I'm going to turn to, this is from February 2020, the stamp of the month called Cherishing Her. I love this stamp set. Obviously, it's no longer available because it was a stamp of the month, but there's a word on there that says sister. Well, I need it to say sisters. So again, I kind of fuss around quite a bit trying to stamp just the S at the beginning of the word so that I can put it at the end and make the word say sisters. And like I said, I cut a bunch of this out because then I'd realized, why didn't I stamp sisters first? Because I need the lucky to be on top of it. And originally I was going to have them stacked together. Excuse me. And so yeah, lots of fussing, as you can see. There are a lot of different ones on here. Ultimately, I decide to split those two parts up, and I'm going to put one at the top of the ampersand and then one down at the bottom. So we'll keep the sisters separate. I didn't like the way this one turned out, but the sisters was fine. So I cut off my other part, and then I'm going to have the lucky to be in a separate strip. So I cut those, and then like I said, I'm just going to kind of layer them here because the title is supposed to go over the ampersand, and I just thought that this was so perfect for what this picture is. They do definitely fight, as I'm sure if you have children or if you are a sister that you know, sometimes sisters fight, but really they are the best of friends and they get along most of the time. And so this is just a really sweet picture of the two of them just kind of hanging out on a normal Saturday, I think it was, from a couple of years ago. And they're so lucky to have each other and to be relatively close in age. I'm sure that they will continue to be good friends as they get older. So I really thought that this was such a sweet title for this particular layout. So there we go. Lucky to be sisters. And then that's pretty much where it ends. I did add just one or two extra things off camera after I had kind of let this sit on my desk, and then I kind of thought about it for a little while. I added one more star up in the top right corner of that picture, and then I also added, you can see it here, the sentiment, "You make everything better," which was also from that February stamp of the month from last year. Over on the tag. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. Everything else is as it was. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Happy crafting!